You're nothing more than a distraction, a gold digger playing the long game. And trust me, once I'm done, he'll see right through you." Judith's words were ice cold, her expression calm, as if she were discussing the weather. I sat there frozen, gripping the handle of my mug so tightly I thought it might crack. I wanted to say something back, to defend myself, but I didn't. Back then, I thought staying polite and composed would win her over eventually. I couldn't have been more wrong. "My name is Sarah Miller. I'm 26 years old, and I was engaged to Ryan, the most wonderful man I'd ever met. Ryan came from wealth, a world I never imagined being part of. His family owned a massive real estate empire, and he was set to inherit it someday. But none of that mattered to me. I grew up in a poor but loving household, working hard as a preschool teacher to make my own way. Ryan loved me for who I was, not what I had, and for the first time in my life, I felt seen and valued. But his mother, Judith, despised me from the start. She thought I was only after the family money, and no matter how kind or respectful I tried to be, she made it clear that she would never accept me. Judith's disdain wasn't subtle. It was woven into every interaction we had. She'd make snide comments about my clothes, about how I seemed sweet but unpolished, or how Ryan needed someone who could handle the pressures of their world. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just her way of testing me, but deep down, it hurt. Ryan, of course, didn't see this side of her. Around him, she was charming and loving, the perfect mother. She didn't criticize me outright when he was in the room, but I could feel her icy glares and catch her condescending tone. When I tried to bring it up to Ryan, he'd brush it off, saying things like, "She just needs time, Sarah. She's protective of me, that's all." I wanted to believe him, so I stayed quiet. But things started getting worse as Ryan and I got closer to setting a wedding date. Judith's comments turned sharper, and her subtle digs became outright accusations. One night, while Ryan was out, she cornered me in the hallway. "You're not fooling anyone, you know," she said, her voice low but firm. "Ryan might be too blind to see it, but I know your type. Poor girl latches onto the first rich man who shows her attention. Classic." I stood there, stunned, not knowing how to respond. I wasn't after Ryan's money, and I'd done nothing to suggest otherwise. But Judith wasn't interested in the truth. She had already made up her mind about me. At first, I told myself I could endure it. Ryan and I loved each other, and that was all that mattered. But the constant tension, the whispered insults, and the way she manipulated situations to paint me as the bad guy started to wear me down. Still, I didn't think she would go as far as she eventually did. One evening, after another tense encounter with Judith, I called my best friend Erica. She had always been my go-to person when things got tough, and I desperately needed someone to vent to. "I don't know what to do anymore, Erica," I said, pacing my tiny apartment. "Judith makes me feel like I'm some kind of criminal for loving Ryan. It's like she's waiting for me to fail so she can say, 'I told you so.'" Erica sighed on the other end of the line. "That woman has issues, Sarah. You've done nothing wrong. If anything, you've bent over backward to be nice to her. It's not your fault she's stuck in her high society bubble." I plopped onto the couch, rubbing my temples. "It's not just the insults. She says things to Ryan about me too, things that aren't true, and I don't know how much longer I can take it. I love him, but it's like I'm fighting a battle I can't win." "Have you told Ryan everything?" Erica asked. I hesitated. "Not really. I mean, I've mentioned it here and there, but he brushes it off. He doesn't see what she's like when he's not around." Erica's voice softened. "Sarah, you need to tell him. He loves you. He deserves to know what she's doing." "I know," I said quietly. "But what if it just makes things worse?" The days that followed weren't any easier. I tried to muster the courage to have a real conversation with Ryan about his mom, but every time I brought it up, I hesitated. He was juggling so much already: work, wedding plans, and his own battles with sobriety. The last thing I wanted was to burden him further. One night, I met Erica at our usual coffee shop, hoping she'd give me the perspective I needed. "Do you think I'm being paranoid?" I asked, stirring my tea, the tension in my chest threatening to spill over. Judith's been worse lately. It's like she's building towards something, but I can't figure out what. Erica glanced up from her phone, her response delayed. I don't know, Sarah. Maybe you're just overthinking it. She's his mom. Moms can be difficult sometimes. I frowned, caught off guard by her tone. Erica had always been the first to defend me when it came to Judith. You really think I'm overthinking it? She shrugged, taking a sip of her latte. I mean, it's not like she's done anything major. Maybe she's just protective, like Ryan says. Her words felt off, like she was brushing me aside. At the time, I didn't dwell on it, thinking she was just distracted or having a bad day. But later, I'd realized this was the moment when everything started to unravel. Over the next few weeks, Erica became increasingly distant. It wasn't just the dismissive comments. She started dodging my calls, responding to texts hours later, or not at all. When we did talk, she seemed preoccupied, barely listening to what I was saying. I tried not to take it personally at first. Everyone has their own stuff going on, right? But deep down, it bothered me. Erica had always been my rock, the one person I could count on to have my back. Now, when I needed her most, she felt like a stranger. Judith, on the other hand, seemed to sense my vulnerability. She turned up her charm around Ryan, constantly planting seeds of doubt about me. I overheard her once telling him, "You deserve someone who understands our world, Ryan. Someone who'll build you up, not hold you back." The walls felt like they were closing in, and for the first time, I started to feel truly alone. One afternoon, Ryan mentioned that his mom wanted us to come over for tea. She says she wants to make an effort, he told me, his tone hopeful. Maybe she's finally warming up to you. I didn't believe it for a second, but for Ryan's sake, I agreed to go. If there was even the smallest chance Judith was willing to change, I wanted to give her the opportunity. When we arrived at her house, I was already on edge. Judith greeted us with her usual overly polite smile, but the moment I stepped into the living room, my stomach dropped. Erica was sitting on the couch, sipping tea like she belonged there. "Sarah," Erica said, feigning surprise, though her eyes darted nervously to Judith. What a coincidence. I was just catching up with Judith. I froze, glancing at Ryan, who looked confused but didn't seem to think anything of it. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice tight. Judith's smile widened. "Oh, I thought it would be nice for all of us to sit down together. Your good friend Erica has been very helpful lately." The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. I sat down stiffly, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. I couldn't help myself. "I didn't know you two knew each other," I said, my voice laced with confusion as I looked between Judith and Erica. Judith raised an eyebrow, her expression deliberately casual. "Oh, we've crossed paths here and there," she said smoothly, reaching for her tea. "Erica has been such a dear. It's always nice to have someone who truly cares about Ryan." My stomach twisted at her words. I turned to Erica, searching her face for some kind of explanation, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Instead, she gave a half-hearted shrug and muttered, "Yeah, it just kind of happened. Judith's been really supportive." Supportive? Of what? I thought. The whole thing felt off, but Ryan didn't seem to notice. He just leaned back in his chair, sipping his tea, oblivious to the tension brewing right in front of him. Judith set her teacup down with a delicate clink and leaned back, her eyes flicking toward Erica. "Well," she said, her tone light but loaded, "since we're all here, I think it's time to address something important. Erica, dear, why don't you tell Ryan what you told me?" My heart dropped, a cold wave of panic washing over me. "What are you talking about?" I asked, looking between them. Erica hesitated, her hands fidgeting with her cup. She finally glanced at Ryan, her expression grave. "Ryan, I didn't want to say anything, but I can't keep this to myself anymore." She paused for effect, glancing at Judith, who nodded encouragingly. I saw Sarah, with another guy. The room went silent except for the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "What?" I said, my voice shaking. "Erica, what are you talking about? That's not true." Ryan's face paled as he turned to me, hurt and confusion etched into his features. "Sarah?" he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Erica took a deep breath, avoiding my gaze, and continued. "It was a few weeks ago," she said, her voice trembling like this was hard for her. "I was downtown, grabbing coffee after work, and I saw Sarah with this guy. They were at some restaurant, laughing, holding hands, and kissing. It was obvious, Ryan. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I couldn't ignore what I saw." I shook my head, my chest tightening so much I could barely breathe. "Erica, stop. That never happened. You're lying. Why are you doing this?" She finally met my eyes, and for a second I thought I saw something there. Guilt, hesitation. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "I'm not lying, Sarah. I didn't want to say anything, but I couldn't just let Ryan keep living a lie." "A lie?" I repeated, my voice breaking as tears streamed down my face. "You're supposed to be my best friend. Why are you doing this? I've never cheated on Ryan. Never. You know me." Ryan stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. His hands were shaking as he turned to Erica. "You're sure about this?" he asked, his voice tight with barely contained emotion. "I'm sure," Erica said, her tone soft but resolute. "I saw it with my own eyes. I'm sorry, Ryan. I thought you deserved to know." I couldn't stop crying. I felt trapped, like the walls were closing in around me. "Ryan, please," I begged, reaching for his hand. "You have to believe me. I don't know why she's saying this, but it's not true. I love you. I've never done anything like that." He pulled his hand back, his eyes filled with anger and hurt. "How could you do this, Sarah?" he shouted. "How could you lie to me? After everything we've been through?" "I didn't," I started, but he cut me off. "Get the hell out of here," he said, his voice trembling with rage. "I can't even look at you right now." I froze, my legs weak and my heart shattered. I looked at Erica one last time, hoping for some sign that she'd break and tell the truth, but she just avoided my eyes, staring down at her cup. Without another word, I grabbed my bag and stumbled out of the house, tears blurring my vision. I couldn't understand what had just happened, or why Erica would betray me like that. All I knew was that my world had just crumbled. The next few days were a blur of tears and unanswered calls. I tried everything, texting, calling, even showing up at Ryan's apartment, but he wouldn't answer. The few times I knocked on his door, I could hear movement inside, but he never came to open it. Each attempt left me more broken than the last. I'd stand outside his building, my hands trembling as I tried to compose yet another message, hoping this one would somehow get through to him. "Ryan, please, just let me explain. You know me. You know I would never do this to you." But each text went unread, the little delivered mark mocking me every time. I tried Erica too, desperate for some kind of explanation. She ignored every call, and when I sent her a long message asking why she lied, I got nothing but silence. The betrayal from my best friend hurt almost as much as losing Ryan. I couldn't wrap my head around it. We'd been through everything together. Why would she do this to me? I barely slept, replaying that moment in Judith's house over and over in my head. I kept thinking about the look on Ryan's face, the hurt, the anger, the betrayal. It haunted me. I felt like my heart had been ripped out, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. As much as I was hurting, I couldn't stop thinking about Ryan. He wasn't just angry, he was devastated, betrayed by the same lie that had torn my world apart. It hit me then that he wasn't just another victim of Judith's manipulation. In a way, he was the target. Her actions had shattered him just as much as they'd shattered me, and in some ways, even more. I tried reaching out to Ryan again, determined to get through to him this time, but it was useless. Every call went straight to voicemail, and every message remained unread. I even went to his apartment again, but when I knocked, there was no response. The silence was unbearable. Meanwhile, the updates from Alex and others grew more alarming. Ryan wasn't just missing work. He was skipping his recovery meetings, avoiding his friends, and spending time in the worst parts of town. The person they described wasn't the Ryan I knew. He was slipping further and further away, and I felt powerless to stop it. It was late one evening when I heard a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated before opening it. When I did, I was stunned to see Judith standing there. She looked nothing like the composed, icy woman I was used to. Her hair was a mess, her face pale and her eyes red, like she'd been crying for hours. "Sarah," she said, her voice trembling. "Please. I need your help." I stared at her, barely believing what I was seeing. "Judith?" I said, my tone sharp. "Why are you here?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, wringing her hands like she was trying to hold herself together. "It's Ryan," she finally said, her voice cracking. He's falling apart. He's using again, and I don't know what to do." I folded my arms, the bitterness rising in my chest. "What do you want me to do about it, Judith? You made it pretty clear what you think of me." Her eyes filled with fresh tears, and she sank into the nearest chair. "I was wrong," she whispered, "about everything. I thought I was protecting him, but all I've done is destroy him. And you." Judith's hands trembled as she clasped them tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Sarah," she began, her voice breaking, "I've made a terrible mistake. I thought I was doing the right thing for Ryan, but I've only hurt him. And you. I've hurt you both so much." I stayed silent, watching her unravel. The composed, cold woman I'd known was gone, replaced by someone desperate and broken. "I lied," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "About everything. The affair, Erica. It was all me. I made it up." She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "I wanted to end your relationship. I thought you weren't good enough for Ryan. I thought you were going to ruin his life." I felt my chest tighten as the weight of her words hit me. "You lied?" I said, my voice shaking. "You paid Erica to say those things?" Judith nodded, her sobs growing louder. "Yes, I paid her $100,000 to tell Ryan you were cheating. I thought if he believed it, he'd end things with you, and he'd find someone I approved of." Her voice cracked as she continued. "But I was wrong, Sarah, so wrong. You've been nothing but good for him, and I was too blind to see it." I shook my head, anger bubbling to the surface. "You didn't just hurt me, Judith. You destroyed him. Do you see what he's become because of you? He's back on drugs, he's lost, and he's hurting because of the lies you told." Judith's sobs turned into full-on weeping as she buried her face in her hands. "I know," she choked out. "I know, and I can't undo what I've done. But Sarah, please, please help him. He listens to you. He loves you. You're the only one who can save him." I stared at her, torn between my anger and my lingering love for Ryan. She looked up at me again, her tear-streaked face filled with regret. "I'll do anything, Sarah. I'll tell him the truth. I'll admit everything. Just, please, don't give up on him. He needs you." I stood there, frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. Judith, the woman who had spent months tearing me down, lying about me, and ruining my life, was now sitting in my living room, begging me for help. Her words echoed in my head, but it was like my brain refused to fully comprehend them. Judith looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, and reached out as if to grab hold of the air between us. "Sarah, please," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her desperation. "He only talks about you. Even in his worst moments, when he's completely lost, it's you he calls for." My heart ached hearing that, but I stayed silent, my mind racing. Judith seemed to sense my hesitation, and she leaned forward, her voice growing more frantic. "You're the reason he stayed clean, Sarah. You gave him hope, something to live for. Without you, he's spiraling. Please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything to make this right." I took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm of emotions swirling inside me. Judith's words hung in the air, and as much as I wanted to walk away from all of it, from her lies, from the heartbreak, I couldn't. Not when it came to Ryan. "I'll help," I said quietly, my voice shaking. Judith's tear-streaked face lit up with relief, but I held up a hand to stop her. "But I'm not doing this for you, Judith. I'm doing it for Ryan. I love him, and I always have. But what you did, it's unforgivable." "I know," she whispered, her voice breaking again. "I know, Sarah, and I'll do everything I can to make it right. I'll tell him the truth. I'll admit everything. Just, please, help me bring him back." I nodded, even though my heart felt like it was being ripped apart all over again. "I'll talk to him," I said firmly. "But this doesn't mean everything is fine. It's going to take a lot for him to heal, for both of us to heal." Judith wiped her face, nodding furiously. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely audible. "Thank you, Sarah." As she left, I felt a mix of dread and hope. I didn't know how Ryan would react to the truth or if we could ever rebuild what we had, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let him fall any further, not if I could help it. The next day, Judith picked me up, and the ride to Ryan's apartment was tense and silent. She gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white, and I could feel her anxiety radiating off her. I wasn't much better. I kept fidgeting with my hands, my stomach in knots as I thought about what was about to happen. When we arrived, Judith knocked on Ryan's door, her hand trembling slightly. For a moment, it felt like he wouldn't answer, but then the lock clicked, and the door creaked open. Ryan stood there, his eyes hollow and red, his face pale. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him, and it broke my heart. His gaze flickered to me, and then to Judith, hardening instantly. "What do you want?" he asked, his tone sharp, his body blocking the doorway as if to keep us out. "I'm tired of you and your games." Judith flinched, her breath catching. She hesitated, gripping the strap of her handbag like it was the only thing keeping her steady. "Ryan," she said softly, her voice cracking. That's exactly why I'm here." Ryan's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" Judith stepped forward, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I lied, Ryan, about Sarah cheating on you. I made it all up. I paid Erica to say those things. I thought I was protecting you, but I was wrong. So wrong." Ryan's face contorted in disbelief, his arms dropping to his sides. "You paid Erica?" he said, his voice rising with each word. "You lied about Sarah? Why the hell would you do that?" Judith sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "I was trying to protect you, Ryan. I thought she wasn't good enough for you. I didn't see what she meant to you, what you meant to each other. I see it now, and I regret everything I've done. Please, I'm begging you. Forgive me." Ryan stepped back, shaking his head as if trying to make sense of what he'd just heard. His eyes darted to me, filled with guilt and pain. "Sarah, is this true?" he asked, his voice almost breaking. I nodded slowly, tears welling up in my eyes. "It's true, Ryan. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen." Ryan stared at me for a long moment, his eyes searching mine, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a flicker of the man I fell in love with. His lips quivered, and then, slowly, the corners of his mouth turned up into a small, shaky smile. "You were telling the truth," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You never lied to me. You never gave up on me." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Never, Ryan. I never stopped loving you." Before I could say another word, he stepped forward and pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly like he was afraid I'd slip away again. His body trembled against mine, and I felt the weight of everything we'd been through in that moment. "I'm so sorry," he murmured, his lips brushing against my temple. "I should have believed you. I should have fought for you, For us. I pulled back just enough to look into his eyes, smiling through my tears. It's okay, I said softly. We're here now. And then, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he kissed me, tenderly, as if savoring the moment. The pain, the betrayal, and the heartache melted away, replaced by the warmth of knowing we were finally back where we belonged, together. Looking back, I still feel the weight of everything we went through. The pain, the betrayal, and the lies. They left scars that won't heal overnight. I spent so many sleepless nights questioning myself, wondering how people I trusted could hurt me like that. Even now, it's hard to think about Erica. She was my best friend, someone I confided in for years, and she sold me out for money. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive her. As for Judith, it's complicated. She's made an effort to make things right, and I can see the genuine regret in her actions now. She's softer with me, more respectful, and I think she's finally realized how much Ryan and I mean to each other. But trust? That's going to take time. I don't hate her anymore, I can't. What she did was awful, but in the end she came to me, admitted her lies, and helped Ryan and me find our way back to each other. Ryan, he's my heart. Seeing him smile again, watching him rebuild himself, it's everything I could have hoped for. He's working on his recovery with a renewed determination, and I'm right there by his side, every step of the way. I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing for sure: we're stronger now. What we've been through has only deepened our love and commitment. If this experience has taught me anything, it's that love isn't always easy. It's messy, painful, and at times it feels impossible. But when it's real, when it's worth fighting for, it has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. For Ryan and me, this is just the beginning of the life we're building together. And for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. Hey there! Did you like the story? If you did, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot and makes sure you won't miss out on more great stories we share here. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.